Hello there. Thanks for joining me. I'm Anthony, and today I'm going to be working on a painting I've been doing for a while now. And I've streamed a few times with this painting already. So I am working on a painting of a glacier with a couple people standing on it for their wedding photo. They flew up to Alaska and did this shoot. Got this guy, photographer to come in from New York and shoot the whole thing, and then they were done and they flew away. So it was a very elaborate scenario set up for this one shoot that they did, but it's a really cool picture and I'm really liking how it's coming out. I did a lot of shapes and things on the background here, which I just recently, over on this side, I was kind of fixing this up, and it's kind of starting to actually look more dimensional now, so I'm liking that. So something like this can easily kind of turn into a mess because there's just so much going on. We got the stuff over here, I guess I'm pretty happy with how it is, but I gotta still kind of fix it up and refine some things a little bit. But anyway, I've got a pretty limited palette here, which means I don't really have a lot of colors I'm using. It's mainly the cerulean blue, lead, titanium white, and there's a color I'm using for some of these kind of like dark areas here, sort of dust or dirt that's coming off of the mountains. That's called slate gray. So at this point, and then also I have a turquoise over here I use, but anyway, today I'm going to keep going with just refining this and fixing it up. And I am just cleaning up my brush right now, wiping off some oil, and then I'm going to start painting. That's what I do here, I paint. Now, down here I have some colors that I had saved from the other day. Put them in aluminum just to keep it from drying out. And I'm gonna just get some of that out of the aluminum because there's a little area where there's like some dry paint around the edge there. I don't want to get any of that in the paint that I'm using right now. So I want to just make sure I don't get any dry flakes. I don't need any little dry chunks stuck in the paint. And I'm going to just cover up that blue because this cerulean dries fairly fast. So I want to, the white that I'm using here definitely does not dry as fast as that. Let me actually fix this here. Okay. I never know what this view is actually going to look like once I start streaming. Usually a little closer, but that's what we have for today. Okay, so I think I'm actually going to get the cerulean out because I am probably going to be needing that pretty soon. There's not really that much of it. Hey, Schmelkelberry. I'm seeing a theme for the emotes today. I don't know who that is, but that's interesting. How you doing? All right, I need to just decide first here what I'm going to actually work on. I could do some more over here. Probably don't want to do this because then I'm just going to be standing in front of the painting for a lot of it and blocking the camera. Actually, I guess I could kind of go like that, but then there's this whole area down the bottom here, which I did this sort of texture, which I guess you probably can't see with the far camera, but I'll show you this way. This is some of the texture I went over the paint with, so that it only was catching the top edges, creating this very sort of rugged kind of, you know, not smooth looking texture on there. So I want to go back over this also and just kind of make it look a little better. Right now it's, you know, not bad, but not what I want for the final version. How's the art going? Going well. Yeah, I'm liking how this is coming out. I feel like this area over here is pretty close to being done. I might just do a little bit more in there. I kind of tend to just jump around when I see something that looks like it needs to be fixed. And then I might see something that needs to be fixed somewhere else, like in a completely different place. So. Yeah, you know, I think I'm going to leave that the way it is because there's not really too much to do right there. I don't want to just sit here and stare at the painting for like 10 minutes while anybody's hoping I'll be actually doing any work that's watching. So yeah, I think I am going to actually work on this area down here. So I've got a lot of these very small, sort of sandy looking bits of kind of ice down there. But I don't want to paint every tiny little dot. You know, if I was using different techniques or if I was doing acrylics, I might just actually take a toothbrush and splatter, you know, these little like bits of paint onto there, but definitely not doing that with my oils. So I think to start out, I want to just go over this right over here because it really, I used a different white for this originally, and it's not quite as bright as I want right now. That white was just a little bit more kind of yellowish. This is not really going to look all that different after I'm done. Just want to kind of get it taken care of because it doesn't look right. There's just this kind of slab of snow. I guess it's like ice with snow on top, but looks like it's going down the side of this little kind of area where there's the water frozen. Add a little bit of oil to this paint here. It's a little bit stiff, thick and stiff. Just adjust this so you can see what I'm doing over there. a bit better. Okay, so I start adding some more texture in here. I need to add a little, you know what? I think right now what I want to do is there's a little edge right over here, actually, that I need to add on the side of this. So I'm gonna just put that in there to show the sort of thickness of this piece of ice here. I'm actually streaming at a higher resolution now than I have been because I just realized that the app that I'm using to connect my iPhone and use the camera on that, it's been defaulting to 720 every time. I've been trying to figure out why it didn't look sharper. Well, that's why. So it's a good app, aside from that. But now it should look better than usual. I can see a little more detail. Okay, and now just gonna fix this up here. It's kind of a darker part on the edge at the top of that. I get some of the slate. Oh, there's not much left over there. I actually have a little back here that's mixed with some white. So get just a tiny bit of that. The way that the dirt is landing here on the ice kind of looks like in the winter how after the snow's been around for a while, there's kind of like the dirt from the road that kind of gets in it and sort of collects in little places here and there. So it was a very windy shoot when they took this picture, so it looks like a bunch of just the dirt from the mountains got blown off and went all over in this little kind of valley next to them. I'm going to add a little bit more of that white back in there. Right over here. Oh, I got some gray on the brush. Okay. Trying to keep the gray from getting in there too much where I'm working right now. There's a little area where it comes down some more right over here, the white area. Okay. So straightening this out right over here. I'm going to move on. Okay. Just a tiny bit right on this edge here. I want to maybe make this not quite a solid edge over here. Just give it a little bit of a soft blur. Okay. Now, I guess I'll keep going with this brush. Not sure if this is what I'm going to need, but I'm going to just try it out. I've got these areas right over here where there's this lighter part. I'm going to just lighten this right here. Actually, looks like it can come up further to the right. Not really sure how this kind of base area that I did is going to interact with what I'm doing right now. I'm just going to try it out. When you're doing an underlayer, the plan is to cover it up, so no surprise here. Not sure if I'm going to really let any of it show through or not, but we'll find out. Okay, so I'm going to just go over here, do the same thing. This is fairly subtle. Already got the colors pretty close to where it needs to be, but going in there and adding more kind of clear difference of light and shadow. This little area in the back right over here, I think I'm going to just leave it. As I'm going through painting all of this, there's all these little random shapes and things. Trying to see where I can sort of refine it to make it a little bit more clear and less just kind of scattered, things where you can't really tell what's going on. Of course, the trick with that is if you can't tell what's going on in the photo, I can't tell what's going on in the photo either. But sometimes just while working, like that happened in a few places up here, the shapes kind of just come together, and without necessarily even always trying, you can kind of get them to just sort of get more refined just by, going through and painting different shapes here and there. Things just kind of become more clear on their own sometimes. So I think that's what happened up in that area above over here. Just kind of like dab the paint on here a little bit to see how that goes with this area. I'm going to try to keep the texture up here a little bit, but I just definitely don't want to leave it the way it is right now because it looks kind of dirty. Of course, it actually is dirt that flew off the mountains, but sort of has that slush snow look right now, which I think, probably not what my clients would like to see when their painting is finished. Okay. And also be careful that the lighter areas I'm adding right now are not just kind of on their own. And then all the areas that I'm not painting are just going to be like the darker part that has this texture happening. So I need to evenly sort of fan it out here and there. Make it look consistent. Okay, I think this is kind of working right here actually. Getting a pretty close kind of texture to what I have on the photo right there. I'm gonna just move the camera a little bit closer here because I can't really see what I'm doing too well as it is from so far back. Okay. So I'm gonna do a little bit more over here. It's kind of like stippling, which is a technique usually done with pen. Just kind of going over it just enough to cover up some of those marks here a little bit, but not entirely. I'm putting the paint on pretty thin. Have to be careful that it doesn't even out too much and just kind of look like there's nothing really going on there. This right here is looking a little bit too even right now. I have to go in there and maybe add a little more dark or something in a little bit. Maybe with the slate, the gray color I used. I have to get a little more white out here. This brush is old enough that kind of not really holding the shape that it had originally as well. Where's the camera? Oh, here it is. Okay. So it's kind of going out a little bit on the side. So I'm actually using that to sort of get that sort of spotty texture going on here, and just I don't really want it to be a real clean edge that I'm making right now. One way you can paint things in general is sort of what I'm doing, where you just put down one color that's a little bit darker, and then after that dries, you go back and do the lights. Or you can do it vice versa, depending on what you're painting. Whatever's the easiest way to do it. I think this is working pretty well. Of course, I might get to the end of it and realize it looks terrible. One or the other. The area up above, one of the things that makes it a little bit harder to see what's going on there is that it's actually out of focus with the depth of field and the reference that I have, which looks nice for the photo, but a little bit harder to see exactly what it is for painting. Oh wow, I look good, thanks Brian. Both of my Logi cameras this time are just zoomed out compared to how they usually look. That's why my face is so small on that camera. I mean, I could take the time to zoom it in, but I don't know. Does it really matter? I think this is because of the website I'm using. The service. Things are just not always the same on there from one time to the next. Anyway. So, kind of got like a harder edge right over here, where, I don't know, I guess there's the top of one little kind of, like hill type of a shape, and then changing direction after that. And for this edge here, I want to try not to get it too distinct, but like enough that you can see that it's an edge. What do you think, Brian? Is it showing up better today than usual? It's closer, but you actually like see the resolution better. Actually, I had to adjust it when I was starting out, because the regular 720 size was too small. Well, once I changed it to 1080, it was too big anyway. So I'm thinking probably all the streams I've done have been at 720 for the main camera showing the painting. I think there's not too much more to do for this little area down here. I'm going to outline this right here some more. It's like a little sort of slope going down in between this piece and then the next area. Little sort of hill shape. Oh, 8K. All right, yeah, I'll do that for next time. Then you can see the pores on my face. I'm going to probably want to go in here and darken this a little bit more. Do that later though, since I'm just adding the light areas now. Sometimes doing it this way, like painting the darker part first and then going back with the light, it can be a little tricky just because the dark part is going to have to look too dark in the beginning. You have to just kind of like look at it in terms of how it's going to be when you add the lighter parts. So by default, it's going to look wrong in the beginning, but you know, if it looks too dark, then you're doing something right. If it's just as bright as it needs to be, you're not going to have enough room to put the whites in there or the light color, whatever it is. So once you have the layer in there, if everything is the way it needs to be, kind of going back in and doing it this way, works out well. The light's just kind of barely hitting this little spot right over here, where it's kind of on an angle where the light was coming in, and just a few little places are kind of whitish. Definitely have some texture from the paint, some actual like 3D texture on the surface. Looks like it's kind of picking that up here and there. So I wasn't really trying to do that, but actually it's kind of making a nice effect. You have to be careful also, by the way, with using a whole bunch of white, going back over, you know, something for highlights. Or sometimes, like here, it's ice, so I think I'm fine with it, but sometimes it just tends to look a little bit cheap, like a little kind of amateurish, because it doesn't actually look like the color that you really should be having on there. But if you need white, then use white. If you're painting plants, a lot of the time the highlights are really more of a like a yellowish color that you mix in with the green. So it really depends on what you're doing. I want to be careful with the marks I'm making, make them also not too regular. I really want it to look like I'm just going across and tapping a whole bunch of times. There's this one little place here I'm just connecting, like this sort of like bridge between the lighter part on the left and the right. It's that one little thing, I think that really just helped to sort of show how this shape is, where there's sort of like a little fin happening over here. And there's a place next to that that's melted or whatever happened. Kind of goes in deeper. I don't want to like go too heavy-handed with this, but I just want to make it a little bit more defined here. Sometimes you overdo it, it's just like too much and it looks like it was just better when it was a little more subtle. I think that's pretty good though. All right, to compliment yourself while you're painting, you can do that. I mean, if you actually compliment yourself and then, you know, answer yourself back, and you know, that might be a problem. Like, oh, nice snow, Anthony. Oh, thanks. Don't mention, you know what? Hey, I appreciate your compliment. Oh, yeah. You just feel the cold wind blowing. So over here, there's a place where it's getting kind of close to the white that I have up here on the top. I gotta make sure it doesn't kind of disappear into that because it's supposed to be separate. Probably have to outline that more with some of the slating a little bit. And this line here maybe should be a little bit further to the left, but it's fine. Oh, thanks. Like, you mean it, glad you like the snow. This is not the snow you would want to pick up and put a little bit of juice on, and if it has like an Italian ice or something, probably wouldn't taste very good. But we're not going to eat it. We're just going to look at it, so we're fine. You got to watch out where the huskies go. That's right. Don't you eat that yellow snow. Very googly moogly. I'm going to add a little bit more white over here. So somebody knows where that line is from. Anybody else know? Nanook. This area right here, I'm going to just outline just a little bit. Separate it from this other part here again. It's always a fine line of just how much to kind of make the edge really sharp versus not sharp. But these little edges, especially for something like this, really make a big difference between not being able to tell what's going on and actually sort of seeing the shape of the depth and everything going in the scene. If you just the little edge, right, just right on the edge of the edge, you know, if you don't have that in there and it just kind of blends together, it's very surprising how much of a difference that makes. Because you know, it's not very much area on the painting, but the sides of things like that, where one thing is ending and another thing is sort of starting, are just extra important, because there's just something different happening there than the middle of an object or places like that. Okay, well, since apparently no one knows except for Live Like You Mean It, it was a Frank Zappa song. Probably came out in the 70s, I'm guessing. One of his better songs, I would say. About a very serious issue. Eating yellow snow. So just do a little bit more over here, and then I'm going to move on pretty soon. This brush is kind of flat. It's like it's a filbert. I'm not trying to really make lines here, but at the same time I don't want to get too extremely detailed with all these tiny little things happening, so just not torturing myself, but I'm kind of not allowing myself to use that smaller brush and saying, no, you can't do it, just so that everything looks more free and far away. The idea is this will look exactly how it needs to. Up close, you can see the marks and everything. It's not always the case in other things I paint or other types of things, whatever other parts of this painting. Definitely they're not going to be that way when I'm doing their faces, but something that has all this texture like what I'm doing right now, it definitely makes sense to do it that way. Oh, thanks. The light looks really nice in this now. So, I'm gonna have to add a little bit more darks in here. A little bit light right now, like right here, and a little bit over here maybe. But kind of sort of doing what it's supposed to. In fact, I need to add a little bit more over here, more white. This is, I think, working out pretty well. The way I did the first layer, or it was actually the second layer, but then going over it with the lighter and white. There are times where I've done things like this, where there was a layer I put down, and I tried to go over it and do a thing, and it just didn't work. It looked like trash. But that's how you learn. By making trash. And once you get better, you don't paint trash anymore. Unless you're doing still life and there's a receptacle there with a garbage bag in it. So this kind of curves in here, like this little crack thing happening. And a little bit darker on the right of the crack than it is on the left. You can, you want to back up a little bit from this. Maybe over this here a little bit more too. And some of this might get a little bit darker at some point. Could be any second now. Could be weeks away. I'm gonna go over this one part right over here. I think maybe I'll use this light gray I've got. Okay, so I'm gonna definitely have to go back in here with some more darks to outline what's going on right there a little better. I'm gonna get a little bit of this kind of bluish color. This part that's kind of in the shadow here a little bit. Little things happening in there. Maybe a little bit darker. And I may let this, like say the part right here that I'm working on, I might let that dry and go over it again later with the slate or something, just to kind of keep building it up. It's a little bit too dark right now. I'm going to add some more little random light bits. Kind of covering up a lot of the last layer here, just because I need to add more dark areas here, but I'm trying to see if I can do it without getting rid of the texture underneath there. Little piece of ice that's kind of jutting out right over here. That's not really standing out too much right now. I think I may need to add more turquoise around it to sort of outline the top better, but I need to do something so you can see that there's a separate thing right there. I mean, there's also a shadow reflection coming out off the bottom here. So I don't really have that at all. That definitely would be turquoise. Not the color I'm using now. Another consideration for edges is When you have places that are very sharp, they tend to draw your attention more. If they're not as sharp, you don't look at them as much, so you don't really want people to be looking at a random little area where there's nothing important happening. I mean, it's painting, you know, they're supposed to look at everything, but it's not supposed to be the first thing they look at. In other words, you don't want that to be your focal point. Then you can make it less conspicuous by just softening the edge. I think that's maybe the majority of what I need to do right now for the light areas. We're just adding the lights in there. Speaking of edges, maybe I want to just go over this one little spot here just a little bit, but it's not really, it's this hard line right there. All right, I guess that's fine. So I'm going to keep going now and go back over this area down this way. My little, so you can't see it, little lift piece that I put on there myself. Moving it down so I don't hit it while I'm trying to paint. I'm just doing the kind of stippling effect again here, trying not to get rid of the original layer underneath, but I think I'm going to bring the painting out because it's going to be a pain in the butt. I'm going to keep on hitting the wood if I don't. this down a little bit. Push the painting out here so it's actually hanging off the edge. Just a little. Definitely want to make sure I don't bump the painting when it's like this, because then the whole thing could fall and get damaged. That's not part of the plan. So I guess I better move the camera down so that my information is not blocking what I'm doing. Now this whole area right here actually needs to get, for the most part, darker, but there's a little bit of lighter area right over this way, so I'm just going to focus on that for now. Something I need to be careful about is making sure that this part down here and that part match, because I'm using a sort of weird technique for this. Not exactly how I normally do a lot of things, but whole idea is they have to look like they go together. If they look totally different, then it's going to be inconsistent. It's going to seem like they don't match. I'm going to get a little texture from what I'm doing right now too. It's a little bit thicker than what I was doing before, but kind of getting a little bit chunky, just the way it's going on. So if I'm going over it again, once this layer dries, then that might be helpful in just adding to what I'm doing. Or maybe not. The shadow's kind of coming down here, and then over to the right, it's definitely lighter in that spot. Over this way here. Kind of going against their smooth. These lines are mostly vertical for the sort of darker things that were there from the layer before. I'm kind of trying to go perpendicular to them, break them up more. But they're still there, but they're just not looking like lines as much. So I just noticed. Can't see what I'm doing. Okay, I'm over here now. Doing the same thing. Breaking up the texture from underneath a little bit, just enough. I think if I was to go back and do this layer underneath again right now, probably would make it just a little bit darker so that you could see more shadows in between what I'm doing now. I have to go back over it and add a little bit more darks in there. Now as it comes over to the right here, it's a little bit darker. You can definitely see there's some shadows over on the side there. There's these little kind of hill things happening, but kind of gradually goes from this area here. It just gets a little bit darker right here. That will definitely need to get darker than what I have right now. But there are whitish little highlights happening on this texture on the sort of pebbly looking surface here. Also, not sure if it'd be better to let it dry and then go back over it with the darker parts, or do it while it's wet. I don't know. It's one of those things that not always real obvious too. there, Lumerius. Wanted to know that, are you interested in artwork? Hope you don't mind me asking. Am I interested in buying artwork? I don't really buy other people's art. I don't even like looking at my own art after I've worked on it. But yeah, I don't really have a lot of art hanging around my house. What kind of work do you do? I'm not on Discord actually, so I can't drop it. Wait a minute. Can you ask that question again? I'm not actually sure what you're asking now that I'm reading it again. That one looks like, what's his name from Slumdog Millionaire? Oh, he's got a new movie coming out. That Monkey Man, I think I might have saw a trailer for. Looks like it might be good. So, just going way out to the edge over here. And this right here, there's this sort of edge of a hill. It's definitely lighter than anything else right around it. The light is hitting it much more right there. Turning towards the light, so I'm going to just go back over that. Make it pretty much solid. Need a little more white here. Well, I think maybe I'm going to move the painting back over onto the easel some more. And hanging out the edge here makes me a little bit nervous. Coffee makes me nervous when I eat it, or when I drink it. Well, it was not my best Carl, but yeah, I'm gonna just push this back. Actually, I'm gonna wipe the edge first. There's a little area right over here. I'm not sure what's going on right there, but looks like this little island of white, something happening. That was actually supposed to be a little bit higher, but it's okay, I guess. Be careful to make these white little areas not too white. But this area I'm painting over here is a lot darker than what I was doing on the left, so what I'm doing is really showing up a lot more. So, okay. Oop. I don't know what happened just now, but that's too dark, or too white. Yeah, that's the opposite of dark. So probably gonna have to go over a bunch of this over here also, but that's fine. These marks that I'm making over here, going over the layer underneath, well, a lot of them are kind of on the same angle, so I want to break that up a little bit. I don't want it to look like cross-hatching or something. Kind of vary the angle of the marks a little bit here. Something I have to be a little bit careful about also is just the perspective. Having an area up here be farther away than an area down this way, but not really, there's not really a huge difference in the reference for that, but these little marks I'm making should be maybe slightly smaller up on the top there than on the bottom. There's really not very much paint I'm putting on here now. It's a very thin layer. Trying to keep it a little bit irregular. Ryan, you talking about this one? I noticed it was a little bit low after I did it already, but you know, does anyone care? Is anyone even gonna notice if you point it out to them, aside from you? Probably not. I mean, I could move it up. Yeah, well, the only reason I would even bother is just looking at the shape of this whole kind of little sort of like row of hills happening here. Oh, there's this one right over here. It is bothering me a little bit, but whatever, probably fine. You really listen to that Frank Zappa song. Not sure what it's actually called. It might be called Watch Out Where the Huskies Go, Don't You Eat That Yellow Snow, but it's probably something shorter. I have a feeling our teacher Richard Kramer would enjoy that song if he was still with us. Unfortunately, he's not around anymore. That's definitely a guy that we both really liked. I'm definitely going to be going over this some more with some darker bluish gray. Yeah. Richard would make a comment about us making the snow too yellow. Well, That could definitely happen. See, when I'm going back over this, I have to be careful not to get it too even looking. I want to make it sort of rough and have that texture going on. Noticing there's a few places here where there's just that sort of vertical line is just showing up a little bit too much from the layer below, so I'll just go in there, get rid of a few of those. And this area right over here, you can kind of see the hill, sort of that shadow, but it kind of blends together a little bit more than what I have. So I'm just try to get this sort of smoother going from the lighter part over into a shadow, but not quite as much of a difference. Something about an area over here also, which I definitely didn't do for all of this, but just looking at, since I'm using a brush that's kind of flat, making like lines basically. You want really things to be going kind of like this way more than that way when you're making a mark. And it's just going over sort of an edge to the point where it's kind of like you can't see it anymore. Things going along that edge there would be kind of flat, more than they would be going kind of in perpendicular direction. But not always though, so it's kind of a general kind of thing to try to stick to a little bit, at least. I'm going to put a little bit of these little white highlights in here. Not too many. I'm going to be a little bit more careful about where I'm putting them because they're going to sort of stand out more on their own than this other stuff. And more of a lighter area. Nope. Well, that's darker than I wanted. I mean, lighter. There's more paint there. Definitely going to be going over that part. Fix it up. Well, that stuff over there just showed up more than I really want, but It's fine. Here's another area where there's the light kind of like going over to the side than I did before. The light is just kind of barely hitting along this edge here. Maybe it's a little bit of blue in there. A few little spots where it's kind of getting lit up. It's my first play of my new music playlist tonight, by the way. That was some pretty cool stuff. This area on the left, I'm going to definitely make blue. The parts I'm putting in there are going to be blue, not white. The light blue. It doesn't really have quite as much, well, I mean, there's some of that sort of pebble texture, but I'll be a little bit more careful where I'm putting it here. I have something a little more specific happening right in that spot. Like the marks I'm making on the painting right now are a little bit like what a woodpecker does when he's just going at a tree and looking for bugs in there. This really narrow little edge here where the sun is hitting, place in between where there's a kind of a crease going through the ice there. And right along that. My arm's getting kind of tired just holding it up here, painting this part right here. It's kind of like those guys that have the victory bars on their motorcycle. And they're like, you know, riding with their arms up in the air. I always wonder, like, how do their arms not just go to sleep after a while? Riding a motorcycle is not really that much like painting in too many other ways, but I guess that's one of them. And there's this little shadow area here. Just want to make sure I get in there. And there's another one down this way. Part over here I'm using blue again. This is sort of in the shadow, but there's the snow part that's showing through, and then there's the dirt part. So you have snow in the light, snow in the shadow. There's not as much difference for the dirt in the light or the shadow, but you know, there's light and dark based on the actual value of the surface, regardless of the light, and then there's the light and the shadow. I'm going to add some white at the bottom here, where there's some places that are a little bit lighter. The sun's kind of hitting them more, or I guess that's it, the sun's hitting them more. But there's not, I don't know, there's a few of them, but kind of fading sort of into the blue a little bit. Which is different than that Mazzy Star song. This part of it over here was a little bit more kind of darker gray, like the place down on the right here. Adding more blue in there. That's what it actually should be. Now it's getting close to the right kind of balance of blue versus gray. Okay, well, I think that's going to be about it today. So thanks for stopping by. Anybody that's interested that hasn't already, please like, follow, whatever, all that kind of stuff you can do wherever you're watching from. And if you're interested in lessons or something, please let me know. Teach online. And if you want to stop by next time, be nice to see you. All right. Till then.